You expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
So now that I've talked about all of the Pierce Brosnan films, I thought it might be interesting to rank them and to also talk about this era of Bond as a whole. Mid-90s to early 2000s, the Pierce Brosnan era, not only because I experienced there's a high demand for Brosnan-based content, but also because this era of Bond films experienced a huge revival over the past few years. This goes on since the release of No Time to Die. People love to talk about this era, to talk about those films, to rewatch them, revisit them, to discuss them. And they just enjoy diving into this era, the 90s. There are multiple reasons for that. First reason is I always thought of No Time to Die as some sort of a bonus round in terms of the dramatic elements, in terms of the darker elements. I thought people had enough of this already, and it was a great bonus round, don't get me wrong. I think No Time to Die is a good film, but I thought it was already time for something new, something more lighthearted, something a little bit more funny. And I think people are ready for this, and this is the first reason for that. I think people are longing for a little more lightheartedness, a little more humor. Second reason is, I think, my generation, born in the early 80s to the mid 80s, this was our entrance into the world of Bond. Not for me, I was a fan since Roger Moore. Was a very little child when I first discovered Bond, but it was GoldenEye was my first film at the cinema, and that's with many people of my age. The Brosnan films, we first saw those films at the cinema. We were old enough to fully experience the world of Bond, and we are old enough to develop some nostalgia for those films and for those years, and for this era. And because there's a lot of nostalgia at the moment, because it's a little, how can I say this? Maybe we are living in not so easy times. Not sure how to put this, but the 90s. A lot of people say, no, it wasn't an easier time. There were always problems, and that's of course right. But I say it was easier times. It was. I spent my whole teenage years in the 90s, and it was an easy time. There was no social media. People weren't beating each other up on social media. Politically not so divided. The left versus the right, and the woke versus the conservatives and all of those things. None of this. It was a fun time. There was a little innocence about it. That's just how I remember it. There was a colorful, fun time. It was a lot of ridiculous fun. It was a silly time. And maybe that's the right way to put it. I remember it as being a silly time, but in all the best ways. So, even I get a lot of nostalgia for those days. Maybe that's just my age, but I think there are cultural reasons, pop cultural reasons for this. So, those are, in my opinion, the reasons why there's a high demand for Brosnan-based content in the world of Bond still. I think this goes on for at least 5 years now. And that's also why I'm a little afraid of what they are doing in the future, because I think people are ready for a little more fun. And I'm not sure if they will deliver on this, but that's another story. Let's rank the films. Okay. Number 4. My least favorite Brosnan film, and I know people won't like this at all. Fans don't like when I say such things, but it's Tomorrow Never Dies. It's my least favorite Brosnan film, and it's my least favorite Bond film in general. I know that's a very controversial take, but I think, this came close to a generic action film of the 90s. I think it wasn't as stylish and as beautiful looking as other Bond films. There were a lot of strange close-ups and no beautiful wide shots, and what the color grading and I don't know. I think it doesn't look as beautiful as the other films, and I'm a little style over substance guilty on that. But it was also a copy of better films, in my opinion. It played it very safe, no surprises here, and I would be fine with that. But everything, it wasn't only a copy, it was kind of a bad copy, in my opinion. Didn't like the villain, didn't like the henchman, didn't like Terry Hatch as a Bond girl. The plot wasn't pretty interesting to me. Generic action scenes, just shooting around all the time. I wasn't the biggest fan of David Arnold's score. I love him, but not this one. So it's sadly, it's my least favorite, but that doesn't mean I don't love it. I also enjoy a rewatch every now and then. I just don't love it as much as I love the other films. So let's put it this way. So number 4 is Tomorrow Never Dies. Number 3, it is Die Another Day. For most of the people, Die Another Day would be a number 4, would be the last place without question. I developed, as I said, a love-hate relationship with this film. Of course, it's ridiculous, it's over the top, and over the top would even be an understatement. It takes things way too far in terms of stupidity and sci-fi elements and bad CGI effects. Halle Berry is not a great Bond girl, in my opinion. The whole thing has a trashy look to it, It reminds me somehow of action films of that time, like Triple X and stuff like that. Stupid films. I hate all of those films. Why am I defending this film? It isn't. It's so over the top. It's almost interesting again, and it keeps the whole franchise exciting and fresh, because the franchise was constantly reinventing itself. It was reinventing itself back then, and it was reinventing itself after this. Considering the fact that they completely turned around and got back to the basics after this film with Casino Royale, it makes this film more interesting. If that makes any sense. Because it makes the whole franchise more colorful, more interesting. You have this, you have that, you have more serious films, you have more silly films, you have over-the-top films, you have down-to-earth films. This one was over the top. And and it wasn't boring at all. Tomorrow Never Dies was a little boring to me because it played it very safe and it copied other films. This one, at least it tried some pretty. It was a little ballsy, in my opinion, because it went so over the top. And I always enjoyed the Invisible Aston Martin. I like this. I know I might be the only one. I like John Cleese in this film. I like the villain in this film. I think he's very entertaining, very funny. I like Rosamund Pike as a evil Bond girl a lot. I like some of the locations in Iceland. I think it's beautiful. A great car chase. I think it's an interesting film and I enjoy it. I even got a lot of nostalgia for it at the moment. I like Die Another Day. So it's my number 3. So my number 2 is The World Is Not Enough. This was an amazing return to form. Coming right after Tomorrow Never Dies back in the day, and I was, as I said, a little disappointed in Tomorrow Never Dies. And right after Tomorrow Never Dies came this film, and I was uh, positively surprised. My expectations were pretty low at the time. And when I first saw this at the cinema, I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed this film. Because, it's also a classic Bond film, but it also tries a lot of new things. It goes to some dark places, serious elements, but it also has the humor and the lightheartedness, and it's a very well-balanced mix of those elements. I think it is one of the most interesting plots in the whole franchise. And the plot and how it develops is very well done, in my opinion. Very interesting. And the more I've thought about it, the more interesting it got. If you really pay attention to how the script is written, it's a very well written script. That's what I enjoy most about this film. And of course, Sophie Marceau's performance is over the top, but in all the best ways. She's amazing. The only main female Bond villain in the franchise. And she does an amazing job playing this damsel in distress, playing this wounded bird who turns out to be very evil and very sinister and got very sinister ideas. My highlight of the film is the torture scene, where she sits on Brosnan's lap. That's amazing. Yeah, that's my number 2 because it's just a very good film, and not only a good Brosnan film, but a good Bond film. So do yourself a favor and rewatch it if you haven't in the last few years, because I guarantee you will have the greatest time. And my number 1, that's not a surprise for people who know me, it's GoldenEye. I love GoldenEye, not only as a Brosnan film, but as a Bond film in general. It's one of I think it's in my top 10 Bond films, because not only because of the nostalgia factor, because it was the first film I saw at the cinema back in the day with my father, and that's very special. I'm not the only one. A lot of us discovered those films through our fathers. Yeah, that's a nostalgic element. But besides that, it was the resurrection of the franchise. It was the resurrection of the Bond films. And they reinvented the franchise back in the day. And I never would have thought that that would be possible, in such a glamorous way, for the franchise to have a comeback like this. I never would have thought that this would work out in a time like the 90s, because, compare 1985 to 1995. That was a completely different time. It was like decades had passed. It was so different in terms of pop culture and how pop culture developed, and how effects in cinema and the look of films developed, and everything. It was, and the Dalton films were ahead of its time, but at the same time, the character of Bond lost some of its relevance. When the 90s came, it was Bond was yesterday's news, I always say. He was from a bygone era, like M also says in GoldenEye, a relic of the Cold War. And reinventing this for a younger generation must have been very challenging. And the fact that they did it in such a successful way, for that alone, this film deserves a lot of respect. Martin Campbell, contributed to the comeback of the franchise, not only for this, but also for Casino Royale. A lot of respect for that. It was a colorful and adventurous film, I think. It was a, how can I say, it was a celebration. I celebrated it back in the day. Not only the promo around the film and the video game and Bond being back in pop culture, being a thing again. I celebrated this, got posters on my wall. Played the N64 game a lot. listened to the soundtrack, bought the CD and everything, the Tina Turner song. And I celebrated it. I enjoyed it to the fullest. And also the movie felt like a celebration. You can tell Pierce Brosnan loved to play the character. He always makes a party out of it. He plays it with such a passion, and it's a fun film. It's a light-hearted, fun Bond film. So many great elements, amazing villains. Xenia Onatop is one of my favorite henchmen in the series, along with Jaws and Necros, and Oddjob, of course. She's one of my favorites. Gottfried John, playing General Ourumov, is highly charismatic. Sean Bean is highly charismatic. Brosnan's performed. The action scenes are amazing. The locations are interesting. There's, a great mix between Cold War spy stuff and light-hearted action film. And the music, maybe not the score, but the title track. It was a great reinvention. It was a great comeback. And still to this day, I can't believe how this worked out, And if it hadn't worked out, I'm not sure the franchise would still exist. Maybe that would have been it, because those films need to be very successful to generate a lot of money. Because those films, they all need a very huge budget. So they have to be they need to be successful. And if it doesn't work out, it's very dangerous for the franchise, And by that time, it wasn't a sure thing that the franchise would return. But they did it. It was successful. It was great. I love GoldenEye. It's an amazing Bond film. Please rewatch it because it's amazing. That's my ranking of the Brosnan films and talking about the era as a whole. Hope you enjoyed this one. And we'll do the same with the Craig films very soon. And then continuing with my movie reviews. And there will be a Christmas special. I'm planning some to have a little drink and talk about On Her Majesty's Secret Service, because it's our Bond Christmas film. It's my favorite Bond film, so I can't wait to talk about it. Thank you for watching. Love you, love the Bond community, and see you very soon.